to me that day is fine. Then I kiss your lips, and the pounding becomes the ocean's roar, a million drowns. Can you see it's love? Can there be any doubt? When there it is day in, day out. When there it is day in, day out. You're clear out of this world when I'm looking at you. I hear out of this world the music that no mortal ever knew. You're right out of a book, the fairy tale I read when I was so high. No, I'm at night out of a book, was more enchanted by a Lorelei than I. After waiting so long for the right time, after reaching so long for a star, all at once from the long and lonely night time, and despite time, here you are. I'd cry out of this world if you said we were through. So let me fly out of this world and spend the next eternity or two with you. So long for the right time, after reaching so long for a star, all at once from the long and lonely night time, and despite time, here you are. I'd cry out of this world if you said we were through. So let me fly out of this world and spend the next eternity or two with you. Joey, Joey, Joe, Joey, Joey, Joe. You've been too long in one town, and it's time to go, time to go. Joey, 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 travel on. You've been too long the harvest times come and gone. That's what the wind sings to me when the bunk I've been bunking in gets to feel a new soft and cozy. When the grub they've been cooking me gets to tasting too good. When I've seen all I want of the ladies in the neighborhood, she sings Joey, 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 travel on. You've been too long in one town, and it's time to go, time to go. I've been bunking in gets to feel it too soft and cozy. When the grub they've been cooking me gets to tasting too good. When I've seen all I want of the ladies in the neighborhood, she sings Joey, 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 travel on. Too long in one place, and the harvest times come and go. Joey, 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 travel. Tonight I mustn't think of her. Music maestro, please. Tonight I must forget how much I need her. So, Mr. Leader, melody, ragtime, jazz time, swing, any old thing to help me ease the pain that solitude can bring. She like cha-chas, so please don't play a cha-ch. She danced divinely, and I loved her so. But there I go. Tonight, I mustn't think of her. No more memories. Swing on. Tonight I must forget. Music maestro, please. She used to like cha-chas, so please don't play a cha-cha. She danced divinely, and I loved her so. But there I go tonight, I mustn't think of her. No more memories. Swing out tonight, I must forget music, maestro, please.
The regular board meeting of the Board of School Directors of Milwaukee Public Schools will please come to order. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Director Baez.
Present.
Director Bonds. Director Falk.
Here.
Director Harris. Director Phillips.
Present.
Director Sane has asked to be excused, as well as Director Voss. Director Woodward.
Here.
Chair Miller.
Here.
We have 5 present.
The Secretary will lead us in the recitation of the Pledge of Allegiance. I invite any members of the audience who wish to participate to do so and ask that those who do not wish to participate please remain silent during the recitation.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we begin tonight's meetings, we have a short announcement regarding interpretation services for the Spanish-speaking members of the audience.
Good evening, my name is Yuritsi, I'm the Spanish interpreter for tonight. Please let me know if you need interpretation services. Buenas noches, me llamo Yuritsi, soy la intérprete de español de esta noche. Si alguien requiere equipo de interpretación, déjenos saber, levante la mano y le daremos un equipo. Gracias. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we move to our agenda, I would like to ask that we share in a moment of silence to commemorate the passing of 6 members of our family this past month. Jevany Frazier, a 9th grader student at Transition High School who passed away May 13th. Dennis King, a 9th grade student at James Madison High School who passed away May 20th. James Shawlin, a retired teacher from Bayview High School who passed away April 8th. Bruce Bamberg, a retired teacher from Rufus King and James Madison High Schools who passed away April 18th. Ronald Lunford, a retired paraprofessional from Morris Marshall who passed away April 19th. And Valerie McKinney Keys, a teacher at Thoreau School who passed away on, on May 8th. As this is the regular, I'd like to, please note that Director Harris is now in attendance. As this is the regular board meeting of the, regular monthly meeting of the board, in accordance with board rules, the board will not take any public testimony on any items during tonight's meeting. Just as a reminder, Robert's Rules of Order dictates that all comments should be directed to the chair. Also, any questions or requests, including those from the public, board members, or the administration, are to be directed toward the chair, who will determine the most efficient way to address them. For the safety of all and to ensure the good order of the meeting, harassment or intimidation tactics of any kind will not be tolerated during board and board committee meetings. Anyone engaging in such words or action would immediately be asked to cease. If such behavior continues, a recess will be called, and anyone participating in these actions will be removed from the meeting before the meeting resumes and will not be allowed to rejoin the meeting. Also, no one other than members of the board, the staff of the Superintendent's office, the Office of Board Governance, and the Office of Accountability and Efficiency, and those who have been invited to present or participate in items of business will be allowed on stage before, during, or after meetings of the board and its committees. For our listening audience, if you wish to access this evening's agenda and attachments, you may do so by visiting esb.milwaukee.k12.wi.us. Now let's begin. Madam Secretary, what's our first item of business?
The first item of business is the awards and commendations. The presentation of the 2018 MPS Valedictorians and Salutatorians.
This evening, the Milwaukee Board of School Directors is pleased to honor the 2018 MPS Valedictorians and Salutatorians for their impressive academic accomplishments. Formally presenting these students at the meeting of the Board of School Directors allows Milwaukee Public Schools community to celebrate their success in meeting the high level of academic achievement that we expect for each and every one of our students. These students should be very proud of their significant and admirable accomplishments, as should their parents or guardians, teachers, principals, and others who help them along this journey. At this time, the chair will ask Denise Calloway, Director of Community Engagement, to come to the lectern to say a few words and to introduce our honorees. I also invite the interim superintendent to join myself at the center stage to greet the students as they cross the stage. As the students are introduced, the chair asks that the audience please hold your applause until all the students have been presented. Ms. Calloway, go ahead.
Thank you, Vice President Miller, members of the Board of School Directors, our Superintendent, Dr. Posley, and our honored guests, our parents and friends of the top graduates of Milwaukee Public Schools for the year 2018. So please join me as we get started. So this is the one time we can have a little applause before everyone is introduced, in saluting our valedictorians and salutatorians for the class of 2018. I know that we are here tonight to recognize the accomplishments of these great young people in high school. And they've all graduated from high school, right? Everyone's graduated. But I also think we're here to celebrate the future that these young people represent. What they have accomplished, while very important, is just the first step in a lifetime of learning, in a lifetime of success, in a lifetime for making a difference in this community. So when I look at you, I think the future is very bright. I think there are a lot of great things that are going to happen. And in the decades to come, when one of you may be vice chair of the board, superintendent, a teacher, you will be an active member and a valued member of this community. and never forget that we all have something that we can offer to make the lives of others better. And what you've done is just that first step on a road to do so. So congratulations to you. Right, we're going to start this evening with the valedictorians. We'll recognize first the school of the student, then their name. We will also call the names of young people who aren't able to make it tonight because we want to recognize the accomplishments of all these young people, whether they're here or not. So let's get started. The Alliance School, Emma Lyrical Whitnow. Asada High School, Jaka Chandler. Audubon High School, Sumaya Ahmed. Bayview High School, Natalie Negron. Bradley Technology and Trade High School, Quant Dat Ying. Carmen High School Northwest, Brian Morales Rodriguez. Carmen High School South, Juan Alba. Grandview High School, Essence Smith. Rapi High School, Gabrielle Mays. Hamilton High School, Diana Garcia Vidal. Rufus King High School. Rufus King has 6 valedictorians. Lydia Anthony. Mallory Bree. Adelaide Durrell. Celeste Gunderson. Olivia Plunkett. And Amy Wazaleski. From McDowell Montessori School, Sean D. Harrelson. Madison Academic Campus, Paku Moawa. MC2 High School, Adam Al-Khatibi. Golda Meir High School, Aubrey Hansen. And this is the first graduating class for Golda Meir High School. It traditionally was an elementary school. Milwaukee High School of the Arts, Estelle Holleran. Milwaukee Marshall, Georgette Kouassi. Milwaukee School of Languages, Denisa Seakosi. North Division High School, Prashia Harris. Nova High School, Carliana Strange. Nova Tech, Natia Davis. Obama School of Career and Technology Education, Brian Adorno. Pulaski High School, Mular Say. Reagan College Preparatory High School has 12 valedictorians. Maggie Balistrieri, Juliana Gessner, Corinne Krashidowski, Don May, Ryan Oberdorf, Ryan Oberdorf, Malcolm Ramirez, Emily Rasmussen, Alessandra Scafidi, Luke Stoger, Eva Subcheck, Harrison Tremalo, Jack Zaker, and those are our students from Reagan. From Riverside University High School, Jamie Kovaleski, Surtaj Grewal. From Rufus King, Lydia Anthony, Mallory Bree, Adele Durrell, Celeste Gunderson, Olivia Plunkett. Oh, I am so sorry. We're reading Rufus King twice. I guess because my son graduated from King and I just wanted to read the list twice. But he was not a valedictorian or salutatorian, so that was my problem. Okay, Shalom High School. Julian Tolliver. From South Division High School, Doubt Twang. Transition High School, Nikita Wren. Vincent High School, Chelsea Vang. Washington High School of Information Technology, Savon Fairley. And Wisconsin Conservatory of Lifelong Learning, Aaron Buckner. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in congratulating the valedictorians of the class of 2018. Okay, here we go. Now we're going to move on to our salutatorians. We'll get one with everybody since we've got a, yes. Okay, here we go, salutatorians. From the Alliance School, Justin Mulqueen. Asada High School, Cornella Marks. Audubon High School, Lucas Kidd. Bayview High School, Noah Halsley. Bradley Tack, Diamond Day. Carmen High School Northwest, Michael Kraft. From Carmen High School South, Kate Rodriguez Quesada. Also from Carmen, Giovanni Claudio. Grandview High School, Aldo Sanchez. Roppy High School, Marquise Mays Robinson. Hamilton High School, Italia Roman. McDowell Montessori School, Serenity Robinson. Madison Academic Campus, Kenyatta Scott. MC2 High School, Zachary Magnuson. Golda Meir High School has 2 salutatorians, Angela Soto and Isaiah Gordon. Milwaukee High School of the Arts, Ken Deason, sorry, let me do that one more time, sorry. Kenton Disenberger. I should have apologized at the beginning for the mistakes I'm going to make and mispronouncing your names. From Milwaukee Marshall High School, Monet Thomas. Milwaukee School of Languages, Abdullah Masri. North Division High School, Angelica Swift. Nova High School, Marquand Green. Obama, Diana Browner Trotter. It's a long list. Pulaski High School, Melissa Amdur Sevilla. From Reagan College Prep, they have no valedictorian or salutatorians because they had 12 valedictorians. We'll move on to Riverside University High School, Celia Vang. From Rufus King, Brendan O'Brien. Shalom High School, Sentata Says Townsend. South Division High School, Meng Tao. Transition High School, Danielle Cantrell. Vincent High School, Larry Flowers. Washington School of Information Technology, Abdul Amin. Wisconsin Conservatory of Lifelong Learning, Terrence Robinson. Let's have a round of applause for all our salutatorians. We're going to get a quick picture of our salutatorians, and we're also then going to ask members of the board of school directors to please begin to make your way out so we can get a picture with everyone. Everybody squeeze in. Yeah. Okay. If you're a bit shorter, feel free to break formation there and get to the front so we can make sure that we see you. No. Okay. Is everyone, let's get Director Woodford in. Hey, is everybody in place? All right, everybody say MPS. Join us, please, in another round of applause for our honorees. Right, if you could follow Ms. Barrett out, we are going to take a picture of all of our honored students on the front lawn. Parents, family members, you're welcome to join us. We just ask that the board continues to be in session, so move as quietly as you can, and then you can come back for cake. Thank you very much.
Do members of the board wish to make any comments? Director Phillips.
Thank you, Vice President Miller. I just want to say how proud we are of our graduates being able to go to a few graduations this year and hearing the stories of triumph that people have overcome in order to become valedictorians, salutatorians is so inspirational, and I just look forward to watching where these students end up.
Anyone else? For me, every year, this is just a pure pleasure to meet these young folks. So, it's very exciting. Well, I was going to ask for another round of applause, but it's kind of late for that. Okay. Madam Secretary, next item of business, please.
The next item is action on minutes of the April 2018 special and regular meetings of the Milwaukee Board of School Directors.
Do any members of the board have corrections for the minutes of April 2018? There being no corrections, the minutes are approved as printed. Madam Secretary, are there any reports or communications from the superintendent?
Yes, Mr. President, we have the monthly report of the Superintendent of Schools. This is an informational report, and no action is required.
Does the superintendent wish to make comments? I'm sorry.
Good evening, Vice President Miller and members of the board. It is a pleasure to be here with you and members of the community this evening to share some highlights from this month. I have always believed that two of the most important and powerful words in the English language is thank you. I would like to begin by saying thank you once again for the collaboration during the FY19 budget process. Together, we made some tough but necessary decisions in order to put children first. I truly look forward to working with you and with staff to develop what our students have been waiting for, the plan that will ensure that all students can read, write, and become proficient in mathematics. Throughout my first week as interim superintendent, I visited schools and talked with students, staff, families at Franklin, Clark Street, Forest Home Avenue, Durfler, Cargill, Bruce, Maple Tree, Niscara, and Milwaukee Environmental Sciences Academy. Some of the schools I visit this week included Holly Road, Mako, Townsend, and Lord Barbie. School visits will remain a priority for me as I look forward to visiting the children and staff in all of our schools. Another highlight was giving greetings and addressing our graduates at many of the graduation ceremonies. I enjoyed sending our high school seniors forward on their next phase of their educational and professional journeys. The school visits and graduation ceremonies allowed me to the perfect opportunity to talk with many students, parents, and stakeholders. Seeing the Valedictorians and Salutatorians this evening was very meaningful and another reminder of what we want for all of our students. At this time, I would like to share some district highlights that occurred this month. Awards and recognition. 4 MPS schools continue to make the list of top schools in the state. 4 MPS high schools celebrated the release of the U.S. News and World Report's list of top high schools. The 4 MPS schools making the list are Rufus King International High School, ranked number 9 in Wisconsin. Milwaukee School of Languages, ranked number 15 in Wisconsin. Reagan High School, ranked number 23 in Wisconsin. Hmong American Peace Academy, as we know as HAPA, ranked number 107 in Wisconsin. And also celebrating bilingual education. The Wisconsin Association of Bilingual Education, WIABI, recognized 12 MPS teachers as the 2018 WIABI Educators of the Year and honored 2 MPS students as writing contest winners. We are making plans to hear the award-winning essays of the students' writing contest winners at next month's board meeting. The 2017-2018 Wisconsin Title I School of Recognition Award recognizes the efforts of students, their families, teachers, school administrators, and school staff to break the link between poverty and low academic achievement. Schools recognized by Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction include the following: Whittier, Milwaukee College Prep, 38th Street, Milwaukee College Prep, Lloyd Street, Academy of Accelerated Learning, Honey Creek, Rufus King International School, Golda Meir School, Milwaukee Spanish Immersion, Wedgwood Park. Also, Krista Walker at MPS is Fulbright awardee. Ms. Walker, a James Groppe High School teacher, received an English teaching assistantship for the Fulbright U.S. student program. She teaches 10th and 11th grade English at Groppe and will earn a master's degree in education policy this spring from Marquette University. Her assistantship will allow her to spend the upcoming academic year teaching English in Greece. Milwaukee Public Schools announced a $25,000 grant from the Wisconsin Economic Development Corp. to expand the fabrication laboratory, better known as Fab Labs, programs at Obama and Bayview. 63 districts applied, and we were amongst the 22 funded. A celebration at Bayview High School formally announced the awards of celebrating Fab Lab Day in Wisconsin. MPS STEM Fair celebrates science and technology. The 11th annual MPS STEM Fair took place at Miller Park with more than 500 students from 48 MPS schools participating. More than 225 volunteers from the community attended the fair to support students by judging, providing interactive STEM activities for students, and assisting with operations of the fair. MPS students celebrate culture around the world. Milwaukee Public Schools students are expanding their understanding and knowledge of global culture and ways that affect our world through the United Nations School International Learning Program, made possible by one of our gracious donors, and being implemented at 13 MPS high schools: AAL, Bethune, Burbank, Garland, Humboldt Park, Mackle, Parkview, Marvin Pratt, Story, Stewart, Victory, Italian Immersion School, Grant, and Zablocki. As a part of this program, MPS elementary and middle school students took part in a special program at Miller Park to celebrate cultures and identify the challenging facing countries around the world. MPS groups get a standing ovation in a national talent show. After weeks of practice, 12 MPS students from the 4 turnaround art schools, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Lancaster, Roosevelt Middle School of the Arts, and Sherman Multicultural Arts, traveled to Washington, D.C. to take part in the Turnaround Arts National Talent Show held at the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts. Their performance honoring Frederick Douglass drew cheers and a standing ovation from the audience. Milwaukee Recreation to renovate 52 playfields. The Milwaukee Recreation Department launched an initiative to renovate and modernize 52 playfields around the city. With the help of local organizations, the business community, and residents, the goal is to level the playing field and update neighborhood playfields. The 4 playfields to undergo the first round of construction include Burnham Playfield, Columbia Playfield, Custer Playfield, and Southgate Playfield. The Milwaukee Recreation will also break ground on a new athletic stadium at Milwaukee Vincent High School. Milwaukee Public Schools has already committed $11 million towards the improvement of play space and athletic facilities. This concludes my report, and again, I would like to thank you for your continued collaboration and the opportunity to serve as interim superintendent of the Milwaukee Public Schools. I am deeply committed to continue the momentum that is in place as we move forward together to implement the necessary steps to realize the district's goals, strategic objectives, and the 5 priorities for success on behalf of children in the Milwaukee Public Schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Posley. Do board members wish to make comments? Thank you for that report. There's a lot happening, and that's just a small percentage of it. Madam Secretary, are there any reports or communications from the board clerk, director, or the Office of Board Governance?
It's from the board clerk and the director of the Office of Board Governance. The first is an informational report, our monthly legislative activities affecting MPS. This is an informational report and no action is required.
Would you like to make comments?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we have Mr. Thiel here that will provide the board with the monthly update on the legislative activities.
Mr. Thiel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Chris Thiel, Legislative Policy Manager, Office of Governmental Relations. A couple of topics today that we've touched on in the past, but need a bit of updating. As of Monday, the state's Blue Ribbon Commission on K-12 education funding will be having its last public hearing. They have traveled across the state. They started here with us at James Madison. And many of the same themes that we brought up in Milwaukee have been echoed in the southwestern part of the state, central part of the state, and northern part of the state. And it's been a very interesting conversation and very interesting to hear about different districts that also are low on the revenue limit per pupil scale. And one topic that continues to come up is the diminished level of funding for students with disabilities. That was brought into particular focus with a couple of memos put forward by the Legislative Fiscal Bureau that demonstrated that statewide at this point in Wisconsin, school districts are covering over $1 billion of costs related to students with disabilities because the federal and state governments have continued to step away from their responsibilities at that level. That's going to come into even sharper focus as we move forward because, and we've touched on this a little bit, but the state has in place a special needs scholarship program. And at the tail end of the last budget cycle, they made some adjustments to it. So now, as we enter the upcoming school year, a student with a disability in a private school will be worth, in the eyes of the state, a 90% reimbursement level, while that same student with a disability in the public school is only worth 26%. So we are entering a moment where we are going to have a 90%, 26% disparity across the state of Wisconsin. This is a program that applies statewide. To get a little more technical with that, what the law says is that the student with disability in a private school will be covered fully up to roughly $18,500. That portion of funding will in part be provided by taking state aid away from the public school district. The school boards in those situations will then more or less be compelled to increase property taxes to fill in that hole. And then beyond that $18,500 level, the state will fully cover 90% of the total cost. So we're entering into that moment. At one point, the federal government, and actually in law now, there's a reference to the federal government covering 40% of costs related to students with disabilities. The federal government only covers about 16% right now. And formally in statute, as we've discussed in the past, the state had language saying that it would cover nearly 70% of costs. And year after year after year after year, that percentage has declined, so now we're at 26%, unfortunately. The memos that were produced for the Blue Ribbon Commission, the question was asked, how much more support, if instead of the cost being shifted onto the local school districts, the state returned to a higher level of responsibility, what would that mean for individual districts? And in one scenario, if MPS received 33% reimbursement, we would receive an additional $13.4 million in actual funding. And if the reimbursement level were at 50%, our district would receive $45.3 million. Today, again, the district has to cover $140 million of cost, in essence, out of pocket. Obviously, we support our students with disabilities, and this is not about our students. This is about the state and federal responsibility, or lack thereof, and what it means when we go through budget discussions like we just had and that we'll have in the future. So we're also in a position now, more or less, where if we want to make sure that our students are treated equally, the public school districts are going to probably be demanding a 90% reimbursement rate for their own students. So that discussion I see as forthcoming. That's our report for this evening. Happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Board members have any questions or comments? Dr. Bias. Dr. Bias first. Go ahead.
I think that this disparity in funding in special education is really outrageous. I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit more about what is being done specifically to address this. What can we do specifically to address this? And how can we help deal with that incredible disparity that when we think about it in the context in which you have stated it, 50% alone increase in terms of support will fill the hole that we have been talking about in terms of this district having insufficient funds to be able to cover $38 million, for example. Okay? I know we did some things with the budget that help us immensely, but we can certainly use those funds rather than do that. So could you comment on?
Certainly, Vice President Miller, Director Baez. We're, again, as we talk about here, we've worked to create a strong statewide network of districts across the state, and everybody from Superintendent Ben Niehaus to the superintendent down in Baraboo in southwestern part of the state. We're talking about these same types of issues. I think we're in the early moments of really presenting the 90%, 26% disparity. When you first talk about it, it's almost unbelievable, to your point. And part of the issue that we have in terms of communicating it is that it hasn't yet gone into effect. So where we are in this process is as of July 1, when we enter the 2018-19 school year, the way the law works is that the private schools where a child is eligible will be keeping track of their costs. And then at the end of the year, presumably June 30, 2019, they'll submit that record to the state, and then the state will reimburse them for the 2019-20 school year. So we're collecting, or they are collecting information now, and you're not going to really see the fiscal effect until more or less a year from now. And so that's part of the difficulty in communicating what's happening here. So we're going to be talking certainly about the 90%, 26%. I would assume that much like we will be calling for that level of a reimbursement for our students, districts across the state will. And then the other thing to keep in mind here, one of the things that, again, under federal law, our staff are responsible for evaluating students. So a cost that doesn't show up on paper is the fact that our school psychologists, our counselors, our social workers, our assessment people are being called out to schools, and under federal law, we're the local education agency. Those federal funds come in to serve all students, so that has been part of what our staff does under federal law, which has been fine. But we now have a new element where obviously we're dealing with some capacity issues in terms of keeping our professional staff, and those staff members are being called out. They have a 30 to 60-day window within which to provide those reports. That's time out of their building and away from MPS students. And we're hopeful that we don't see everything's done by the book, I'll just put it that way, as we enter into this new territory. So that's another thing we're going to monitor more closely going forward.
One follow-up, but it is my understanding that we also have a situation where private schools tend to receive children with special needs, and at the third Friday of the month, they count them for their purposes, but they send them back to our schools. Many, I mean, I'm not saying all, but many, okay? And we don't have a good handle on that data, is my understanding. But it's quite significant because it should be part of the discussion too. There is the issue of the disparity as a whole, but there's the issue in practice in terms of how things happen and how private entities are able to sort of like report that they had these kids in their schools, but after the third Friday, they come to us. Okay? So, any comment on that?
Chair Miller, Director Baez, we've had good discussions and again are having a meeting tomorrow with the professional staff in this particular area to make sure that we have processes in place to obviously attend to the third Friday issue in particular, but this migration back and forth to really make sure that we have a clear understanding of it, to document our costs so that we can, make the policy arguments going forward. As this is playing out, we absolutely, we will. I had a discussion yesterday about all the technical features you need in the data keeping and the drop-down tabs and those types of things. So those are being worked on right now.
Director Wilbur.
Yes, for as long as I can remember, there's been an inequity in the financing for other schools, private schools, as opposed to the public school. When or what do you suggest, or when is there going to be some outcry and something going on to about these type of things? What are we going to do? We before I got on the board, I've heard that same thing about the inequity in funds for the public schools and opposed to other schools. When do we do anything, or do you have any suggestion? Where do we start?
Chair Miller, Director Woodward. For a long time, it's been a Milwaukee-only issue. And now that it is a statewide issue, whether it's the revenue limit disparity or this, the impact on voucher funding per pupil versus what's going on in the public school, again, every district across the state, Kettle Moraine testified to this effect, Baraboo testified to this effect. So I think you're definitely seeing it's not a partisan issue. It's not a one region only issue. And so there's certainly momentum happening. I got to believe that that will play a part. We have evidence in the tail end of the last budget process where Co-Chair Nygren in Marinette, where the per pupil funding is low, pushed forward a motion to increase that to some extent, but obviously we need to accelerate that. And to your point about the history of this conversation, we've heard an exaggerated number of per pupil funding for MPS that's been taken out of context. And when you really kind of start to apply our starting point and then apply the associated cost when the state and the federal government are not funding special education appropriately, we're really starting not at 10,122 per pupil on the revenue limit, but something south of that, closer to the 8,500 when all is said and done. So putting that into terms that are easily understood is always the process, but I'm hopeful we can move things forward.
Yes, please. We hold this legislative conference every year through WASB, and about what we should be doing, letter writing campaigns and stuff like that. Have you seen any of that come into fruition in the legislature? Are anything been going on?
Chair Miller, Director Woodward, certainly in a couple of these key points, yes. I would say that the superintendents and board members in their conversations with legislators have been much more direct about solving these problems. The fact that so many districts have to go to referendum to just keep the doors open and provide the basic programs, that's translated into a conversation in communities throughout the state where now people have a better understanding of where we are with school funding. So all of those things together have been helpful.
Thank you, Mr. Thiel.
Thank you.
Madam Secretary, what's the next communication from the Office of Board Governors?
The next communication is action on a request to retire to executive session in order to confer with legal counsel regarding litigation in which the board is or is likely to become involved. This item has been noticed for possible executive session pursuant to Wisconsin statutes, section 19.85, parent 1, parent G, which allows a governing body to retire to executive session for the purpose of conferring with legal counsel who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the body with respect to litigation in which the board is or is likely to become involved. The recommendation is that the board determine what action it wishes to take relative to this matter.
If there's no objection from the board, for the sake of efficiency and out of consideration for our audience and staff, we will postpone this item until the end of our agenda. Madam Secretary, are there any reports or communications from the Office of Accountability and Efficiency?
Yes, Mr. President, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice President. There is one communication from the Office of Accountability and Efficiency, and that is the monthly report and activities. This is an informational item, and although it has been noticed for possible action, no action is required.
Does the Office of Accountability and Efficiency wish to make comments?
Vice President Miller, Matt Chasen, Office of Accountability and Efficiency. Just very briefly, this month we brought our preliminary report on the SRO evaluation through the Committee on Accountability, Finance, and Personnel, with the final report and the evaluator to appear next month at that AF&P meeting. So we invite any board members who are interested in hearing that conversation and participating to please show up. Additionally, we continue to work on the diversification of workforce and equity audits per board action, with those reports to appear no later than September, as we look to include this complete year, this complete fiscal year in our analysis. And with that, we're happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions, comments from board members? Not seeing any. Madam Secretary, what is our next item of business?
The The next item is action on the reports of the independent hearing officers of the Milwaukee Board of School Directors, student expulsions.
I'd like to entertain a motion to accept, modify, or reject the reports of the independent hearing officers of the dates and times listed in our agenda. I guess we should get a report first. Is there anything to report?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
You have the items attached, and so if board members have had an opportunity to review the reports,
Okay.
you can go straight forward with your motion or ask any questions.
Okay, so I will entertain a motion.
I move acceptance of
Okay, motion by Director Woodward. Second. Second by Director Falk. Okay, any comments, questions on the report? Not seeing any. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
On Director Woodward's to accept the reports of the independent hearing officers, seconded by Director Falk. Director Baez.
Aye.
Director Falk.
Aye.
Director Harris.
Aye.
Director Phillips.
Aye.
Director Woodward.
Aye.
Chair Miller.
Aye.
That's 6 ayes, the motion passes.
Thank you. We will now have the reports of the standing committees. Since public hearing was given at the committee meetings, the board, as is customary, will not be giving public hearing on these reports this evening. Madam Secretary, what is the first report?
The first report is that of the Committee on Accountability, Finance, and Personnel. No items have been set aside from this report.
Do board members wish to set anything aside, set aside any items from this report? Not seeing any. Madam Secretary, what's the next report?
The next report is that of the Committee on Legislation, Rules, and Policies. The administration has asked that item 6 be set aside.
Do board members wish to set aside any other items from this report? Director Falk.
On item number 2.
Item 6 and item 2. Madam Secretary, what is the next report?
The next report is that of the Committee on Strategic Planning and Budget. And there are no items to be set aside.
Do board members wish to set any items aside on this report? Not seeing any. Madam Secretary, what is the next report?
The next report is a report of the Committee on Student Achievement and School Innovation, and no items have been set aside.
Do board members have any items to set aside on this report? Not seeing any. What's the pleasure of the board in regard to the balance of the reports of the standing committee? Director Falk.
I move for approval. The balance.
We have a motion and a second. Director Falk, a motion with Director Harris second. Please call the roll, Madam Secretary.
On Director Falk's motion to approve the balance of the reports, seconded by Director Harris. Director Baez.
Aye.
Director Falk.
Aye.
Director Harris.
Aye.
Director Phillips.
Aye.
Director Woodward.
Aye.
Chair Miller.
Aye.
That's 6 ayes, the motion passes.
Director Phillips, do you have anything to say?
Do we have anyone here that is up for promotion or appointment at the district? Lovely, please stand. And let's give these people a round of applause. Thank you so much for your commitment to Milwaukee Public Schools. Go forth and do great things.
Some friends of mine. Madam Secretary, what's the next item, please?
The first item set aside would be item number 6 from the Committee on Legislation, Rules, and Policies, which is action on a request to approve the proposed revisions to administrative policies 8.01, student non-discrimination, 8.02, student anti-sexual harassment, 8.23, weapons in schools and criminal offenses, 8.27, student complaints and grievances, 8.28, student discipline, 8.32, student expulsion, and administrative procedure, 8.01, student non-discrimination, 8.02, student anti-sexual harassment, 8.28, student discipline to comply with the U.S. Department of Education Office of Civil Rights Compliance Review. Your committee recommends that the board approve the proposed revisions to the policies as outlined in the attachments.
Does the administration wish to make comments?
Vice President Miller, members of the board, at this time, we would just like to walk through the process that we went through to get to this point, to have the items that are available to you, and then we're going to ask to make a strikeout on one of the items that we have. And I would ask at this time that Mr. Matthew Boswell come forward to do just that, as we have Mr. Chapman, who's here as well. Mr. Chapman, if you could come up and walk through the process.
Excuse me, Dr. Posey, are you waiting for Mr. Boswell?
Yes, but we're going to go ahead. Chapman is going to walk us through step by step of what happened with the process.
Welcome, Mr. Chapman.
Members of the committee, it's my pleasure to be here. I'm going to walk you through the process. We held 7 community conversations in regards to the policies and procedures. So we did get community input. Sorry about that.
Good evening, Vice President Miller, members of the board, Matthew Boswell, Senior Director of the Department of Student Services. Oh, okay. So, excuse me. So the Department of Student Services presents to you the following revised administrative policy and procedure for your approval. Administrative Policy 8.01, Administrative Policy 8.02, Administrative Policy 8.23, Administrative Policy 8.27, Administrative Policy 8.28, Administrative Policy 8.32, Administrative Procedure 8.01, Administrative Procedure 8.02, and Administrative Procedure 8.28. These revisions are being brought forward due to the Office for Civil Rights biannual data collection review in 2014, where they found a disproportionate number of African American students receiving referrals, suspensions, and other disciplinary actions. The board approved resolution agreement 05-14-5003 at its December 2017 meeting because it is committed to reducing the disciplinary disparity noted in the complaint. The district wants everybody's input on what needs to change and a commitment to work with us to change it. NPS has been working with students at high schools and middle schools to get their feedback on what needs to change and improve. School disciplinary teams now exist in each school to get feedback from staff and parents. In April, 7 listening sessions were held all throughout the city of Milwaukee to gather community input. This is a long-term process and commitment, and we are just at the beginning beginning stages. NPS welcomes the input and support of their students, community members, and staff. The resolution agreement states that the district will revise its policies and procedures by June 18, 2018, and submit those changes by June 30th of 2018. The citywide discipline committee was convened in March 2018 to review and conduct and review the code of conduct and review vague and subjective language. Approximately 40 individuals were invited to be part of this committee. The invites included central administration staff, parents, students, principals, teachers, the Milwaukee Teacher Education Association, the Office of the City Attorney, the Milwaukee Police Department, and community organizations. The committee as a whole met a total of 3 times over a 4-week period. Attendance was held on March 14th, March 21st, and April 4th. The committee was divided into subcommittees to review and revise sections of the code in between meeting dates. Each committee presented their revisions to the larger group of discussion. A majority vote was taken in each section to determine consensus. Learning environment, physical safety, and property and controlled substances. After careful review, the administration wishes to present the following.
Chair Miller, members of the committee, I would just like to add that the Office of Civil Rights have given us a deadline of the 18th of June to get this information to them. And for the sake of moving, we would ask that if we could go for approval to go forward with the balance of this policy. However, we want to look at 8.23 Parent 8, Parent B, and hold that language for further discussion that can take place throughout the month of June and come back to the board in July to move forward. And also just to note that we have the SRO policy and that piece out there, and all of that could come back together if we could be granted approval.
Okay, Madam Clerk, so what's the procedure for doing that? What the administration has asked?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, if I'm understanding correctly, Dr. Posley is asking that in the policy, Area 8, Parent B be stricken from the policy, and the policy move forward seeking board approval without that language. And any other revisions to the policy would be brought back to the board for consideration.
So you're saying that it could move forward with the administration's recommendation, which includes striking of that particular paragraph?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, that is correct.
Okay, I wanted to ask before I go to board members, does the Office of Accountability and Efficiency wish to make comments?
Vice President Miller, Matt Chase, Office of Accountability and Efficiency, recognizing that a lot of this work is the output of the OCR report, do we have any concern that striking this language jeopardizes the approval that we were seeking prior to June, or do we get a sense that the balance of the rest of the edits get us where we need to be?
Chair Miller, members of the committee, Matt Chasen, I think, number one, we are under a deadline, and I think striking through this, we will meet that deadline. However, we still need to our goal is to get this done before the start of the school year, to bring this back in July to July's board meeting.
Board members, do we have comments? Director Bias.
Yes. Yeah, I had several comments. I'm glad the administration is doing this. This makes a lot of sense, that we take a close look, particularly at the language of, section 8B, and striking that out can help immensely. I have a couple of concerns. One is that there is the issue of how do we redo the thinking regarding language so that it's consistent with our obligations under OCR. And second, I am still concerned about the process of how we got here. And I'm wondering if Mr. Boswell can speak a little bit more to that process, because it seems that the feedback we have been getting is that even though the citywide committee conducted 7 hearings, and they were community hearings and there were people involved, et cetera, that many of those sessions were not well attended by the public that is impacted by this, particularly young people, and that that in itself is suggestive of the fact that we need to do something to improve that process of input. And so I'm thinking about how do we do that in a way that is consistent with what we had discussed in this board in the last several weeks about the necessity to make sure that the voices of young people are really heard in an issue as significant as this one, because we're talking about the school to prison pipeline, and this is very serious. We need to transform this district to stop that. We need to make sure that this inequity that was identified by the process and by OCR, where particularly black students are sort of like so disproportionately impacted by some of the practices in our schools. We changed that, and we changed that so it doesn't happen. That inequity does not continue. I know this is not going to happen overnight, but poverty is not going to run away, because that's part of the issue here too. But how do we get the voices of young people in this process in a significant way, and how do we do not dismiss the voices of concerns of young people that are coming to us and saying, if you do this, you may trigger other kinds of things.
So Vice President Miller, Director Byers, I'm in total agreement as well as administration in terms of hearing the voices and concerns of our most prized possession, our students and young people. So I'm in total agreement with that as well. And whatever effort that would take to make sure that takes place, we are committed to doing so. However, I just want to make sure that we clarify a couple of things. One, in terms of the Rights and Responsibility Handbook and the Code of Conduct, whenever you are tasked with changing any language in terms of the levels, in terms of the Code of Conduct, you have to convene a citywide committee. So that was done. In terms of convening that citywide committee, parents, once again, parents, committee members, community members, and students were part of that discussion. In terms of designing that committee, you can't have a committee of 500 people. It's a committee of about 50 people representing each area. We're talking directly in reference to the policy 8.23 as well. So, that's definitely a conversation that we welcome in terms of students. We welcome the input. We welcome the efforts, and we align with them to making sure that any disproportionate practices in MPS or anywhere in the city is talked about, and efforts are made to go after them with action and change them. So we stand ready to make sure that takes place in Milwaukee Public Schools.
And I would also like to add this piece around student voice is very important and dear to us, and we have the Superintendent Advisory Council where we have 2 individuals from each school. I've been working with Director Falk and Director Harris, looking at student ambassadors and also students that we will start in the upcoming school year coming to the board members to speak to the board, to speak out using, through a venue or voice. And so we're looking for every opportunity we possibly can to talk to young people. And one of the things that I have had an opportunity to go from school to school during the transition portion of my arrival as an interim superintendent, one thing that young people shared with me is that, Dr. Posley, we want individuals to hear our voice. We want our voice to be heard. And so we are doing everything that we possibly can to make sure that happens.
One follow-up, yes.
This is a follow-up. I just wanted to make clear, look, I trust that we are on the same page in terms of dealing with these inequities. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind. I think that the issue here is that you have formal procedures for engagement and involvement, like the citywide committee, but you have the development in our communities of organized student groups, organized youth groups, okay? It's come to my attention that some of the organized student groups have not been necessarily heard as well, okay? So I'm just hoping that we have a new age coming up here, a new way of doing things, and that we find ways to do that so that if we strike this item, we're striking it with the understanding that we're also going to create means of input. And that input necessitates that we look at who we have in our schools and who we talk to, parents, teachers, kids, what have you, and then how do we get organized student groups and youth groups in the process so that they can have their input and their say in what we're doing here. Thank you.
All right, Director Woodward.
Yes, I would just like to say, I'm aware that we have meetings and all, that you put out notice of these meetings, and people have an opportunity to attend. And that's been a problem. There are most meetings that are held, information poorly attended through our main, it's just a fact. So I think what we need to do is come up with a way that we can try to reach the students when they are there, or maybe in some of these organizations that you have, like the Black and Latino males, where they're working with the students, and other different groups, Black Lives Matter, get it to the heads of those groups and let them do the survey of the students. Because you can't make people come to a meeting that you set up. We can't get parents out to the meetings. So I don't think that should fall on it, but I know as a matter of having to meet this deadline, it's crucial that we move forward. So I move that we come back to that one item and then move forward to meet the deadline of the Civil Rights Commission.
Director Woodward, is that a motion?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, just for clarity, Director Woodward, are you moving approval of the items with the strike-through items that Director Posley
Yes.
striking through
Until, and come back to it.
number
and come
8,
back to
parent
it
B?
at a later date.
So noted. And that's seconded by Director Harris.
Well, I'll wait till it's my turn, because I want to ask a question about that. Okay, the next person was Director Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I certainly commend the committee for the work that you've done. And I would also agree with Director Woodard. You know, for years I chaired the Ambassadors for Peace program, and thank you, Superintendent Posley, for the youth ambassadors, the student ambassadors. That's a great idea. I worked in that capacity for many years, working with student groups in different schools. We have the capacity to meet with our students and young people to have input on these kinds of policies. It's already in place. If we just take advantage of the people who we contract with in the district to work with our students, that work with our students on a daily basis in groups, we could have that input, just like we did when at community high school, the students were being expelled and suspended because they would not get into class on time, and the students did a survey with the bus company and found that they needed to add buses. So we can resolve this, but the committee, I commend you for the work, and I certainly, and you know, this is a good example of democracy at work, community involvement. This language is something that we should have caught before it got to this point, but it was the community, people in the community who caught this and brought it to our attention. And this is one example of why we need a strong public school board where the people have input on the policies that go in place. So I commend the organization and Mr. Dakota Hall for the work that you guys did in bringing this to our attention. And thank you, Mr. Vice President.
Thank you. Director Falk.
Thank you. This is a question to Mr. Chasen. We have this report coming from the SRO expert, and looking at the gentleman's background, it is not so narrowly focused just on SRO, but in generally on the issue of safety. So the issue would be, I would imagine, because how SRO officers operate, the protocols under which they operate, as well as if their interactions with things like the principal, and as well as if we have an internal safety department as well, that this whole administrative policy would be under his purview to look at and make recommendations. Am I on track on that, or and would you be bringing up the controversy that it is regarding this particular policy with him as he puts together the final report?
Vice President Miller, Matt Chasen, Office of Accountability and Efficiency. I think is well within the scope of the services we've requested of our evaluator to look at this, and I think there is probably room in our contract to see that he provides some guidance on this as well, given his expertise in this area.
Thank you.
Director Woodward, yes.
Yes, I just would like to ask a question of the city attorney. Is that okay?
Yes, it's
Okay.
appropriate.
City, the motion that I made, would that be something that is okay to do, to come back to that item and go forward, as the city attorney said?
Vice President Miller, Director Woodward, absolutely.
Say your name for the record.
Attorney Calvin Furman. while we do want to meet, obviously, the deadline set by the OCR, there's nothing to prevent us from then making changes, and I'm sure they would welcome us continually looking at this and making changes. So I think it's very appropriate to come back to any of these items upon further discussion with the community, and then bring it forward to the OCR and say, we've looked at it further, and these are additional changes that we've had. And I'm sure they would welcome that.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I just wanted to raise one issue with the administration. Dr. Posey, you posed the idea of coming back at the full board meeting in July, and that would give the month of June and the month of July to meet with a number of community organizations, as I hear Director Woodward and Director Baez saying. And this, because, for example, you have LIT, you have YES, you have students that Khalil Coleman is working with. I mean, there's just all these groups of students that are involved in doing different things out of our schools and in the communities. And to be able to meet with them over those 2 months, I think would be very helpful to this process, if that's acceptable to you.
Vice President Miller, members of the board, that is correct. We want to take the whole month of June and a portion of the month of July to get out to talk and get to all of those groups. Anyone that may have, want to spend some time with us, we welcome that, and go through the whole process as well.
Any other comments? Yes, Director Baez.
Yes, Director, I just had a clarifying question. When you put this process into motion and it comes back in July, does it come directly to the board, or does it come to a committee to hold hearings that allow testimony
That's a question for the board clerk.
Yes, please.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, while the July timeline sounds really quick, I would like to advise two things. One is that the input includes both middle and high schools, and that it would include our middle school students attending K-8 schools, and they would be out of school until September. And secondly, any revisions to policies would be first referred in July, and then held over for a month and sent to the board's next month's committee. So you would not see a revision to this policy until the Legislation, Rules, and Policies Committee in September. That would be the earliest.
A follow-up, that's what I want a clarification on, because I think that important to this process is holding hearings, being able to hear directly from the public. So if the administration goes through a process of revising and looking at the language with the city attorney's office, my understanding is that at the July board meeting, this matter will come to us and it will be then sent to the legislation committee again, so that hearings can be conducted, and that may not happen until September then. Okay? And then after that, the board again. So I just want a clarification on that.
Madam Secretary.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, in addition to what Director Baez said, the administration also implemented some new policies around safety that they indicated would be brought back to the board after the first semester. So holistically, given the amount of time that it would take to craft the new policy, have the policy vetted, ensure that there is community input from the various groups, allowing our students to go back to class, it may be feasible to have this policy completely reviewed and full community input and brought back to the board for consideration after the first semester of school.
Could I, I'm a little confused now. If the administration could respond, please, to this.
Vice President Miller, members of the committee, we could use the time. However, the only concern that I want to caution, a bit of caution on, is the code of conduct. And we need to make sure that we get our code of conduct out and make sure that families know what our code of conduct is. And I would not want to change the code of conduct. It may have this coming out later and not start with the code of conduct. Outside of that, that's our only concern.
Director Bias.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get some clarity here on how we can proceed.
Exactly.
We can all get on the same page here. We can do this. Go ahead, Director
I
Bias.
think that we're trying to do that. I see the need to accelerate this as much as possible. I see the need to make sure that we comply with OCR, and that's a long-term process. And having been involved in those processes, I know that there are some expectations that they will have, and they are not simply going to sit back and say, okay, whatever you're done, okay? So we need to comply with that. But in terms of the item, just the item, okay, that needs language clarification, your 8.283, whatever. As it pertains to that item, the administration is saying, we will take a look at it, we will bring it back to the board, okay? If it comes back to the board, then the board will send it back to the Legislation and Policy Committee at some point, okay, to hold hearings. And I think that the hearings are important because they are a means by which we hear the public to see if the process of engagement and participation was appropriate and perceived as doing what it was intended to do, okay? But I see that we need to move this fast. So if we hear it in July and it goes to committee in September, and the hearing is held in September, I was hoping that by early fall, we're able to do something about this particular language. So you may advise us, attorney, on where we're at with this and if it's appropriate. I mean, what would OCR say? That's what I'm saying.
Vice President Miller, Director Baez, if you approve as it's been presented, obviously OCR will have the revisions that we've made and they will be digesting that. I don't think it's a concern, and obviously that I let the administration make that determination to bring the particular areas into the July board and bring other areas later. I think OCR wants to see change happening.
Yeah.
And it's going to be an ongoing process. This is not going to be done in July by any stretch. So if it's a continual update, I think they're going to be happy to see that you're not just ignoring this problem and you're continuing to address it. So it can be piecemeal. And I think it's an important first step to get, obviously, this bulk changes to them to see that, look, we're moving quickly, but we have to get it right. So I hope that answered your question.
Oh, that's fine.
Director Woodward.
Yes, I would just like to caution us too. I attended the one at Pulaski, and if at the same time there was a basketball game, so students couldn't be there. So I think one consideration has to be at a time when they would be in attendance or present, a deliberate act where they would be, other than after school when the sports are, and that those people that are holding these organizations with our youth, that they, during their sessions, that we tried to get them at that point. Because even in the evening after that, a lot of things are going on in the schools and things, and if they are not in attendance, you're not going to get that information. So it's got to be a conscientious effort to see how are we going to target where they are and when we really can get their input. And I think it's going to have to be contingent upon the leaders of these organizations to avail themselves when they can have their students available to participate in anything that we're doing.
I'd like to do a couple things. What I heard the board secretary referring to is that there's components to the OCR requirement that are going to take time, and it's the piecemeal issue that I hear our lawyer speaking to. So let me ask of the administration and of the board clerk, if we adopt the resolution proposed by Director Woodward, does this satisfy what we need to do at this point? So if I could, Dr. Posey, if
Vice
you could address
President
that.
Miller, members of the committee, yes.
Okay. And does it make sense to you also in terms
Chair,
of the
members
process?
the board, that is correct, yes.
Okay. Any other comments? Not seeing any other comments. If you'd call the roll, please.
On Director Woodward's motion to move approval of all of the policy changes and the procedural changes with the revision to striking through the language in Administrative Policy 8.23, Parent 8, Parent B. That language currently reads that the school administration shall involve the police department for any instance in which criminal activity is suspected. That language is being suggested to be removed from the policy. On the motion as read, Director Baez.
Aye.
Director Falk.
Aye.
Director Harris.
Aye.
Director Phillips. Director Woodward.
Aye.
Chair Miller.
Aye.
That's 5 ayes, the motion passes.
Madam Secretary, we have other items set aside.
Yes, Mr. Chair, the next item set aside is item 2 from the Legislation, Rules, and Policies Committee. One moment, please. That item is action on Resolution 1819R-001 by Director Woodward regarding board districts. That item has been set aside by Director Falk.
Director Falk.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to point out a couple things that are said right within the resolution. It says, and you look at the third whereas, which says Board Rule 3.01 Code of Ethics. And it says the Board of School Directors states, board members shall act cooperatively, bearing in mind the best interests of the people in the jurisdiction of MPS and the students whom the board serves. Now, implied in this is the entire district. And what is implied in this is that we are to serve the entire district. Now, if you go down to what it is stating in the resolve, it says in the first resolve, the board members shall follow the Board of Ethics and be respectful of those who have been elected to represent their respective districts on the board. And I don't have a problem with that, but the next one clearly is. Because listen to what it says. When a board member, when the member of board is aware of an issue that has arisen in another member's district, rather than attempting to address that issue, him or herself, that member shall make the director in the district in question aware of the issue. So if you have an issue, somebody comes in your district who lives in your district and has an issue of bilingual education, and the school that that child goes to is outside, not in your district, this says you are not to attempt to address that issue, but only make the school board member in that district aware of that. That's what this says. If you live in a predominantly African American area and one of your constituents comes to you and says that they go to a South Side school in which they are facing racial discrimination, you are not to address that issue. You are only to tell the school board member of that district. That's what it says. I'll read it to you again. When a member of the board is made aware of an issue that has risen in another member's district, rather than attempting to address that issue, him or herself, the member shall make the director of the district in question aware of the issue. Now, keep in mind, it says in terms of our code of ethics that we are to work cooperatively. Now, you could make an argument that you are going to try to address something in that district, and out of protocol you might feel necessary and good graces to inform the district person there. But to say that you cannot touch that, which is what this says, is problematic. We are not the city of Milwaukee. We are not operating with wards, okay? Where you have the right to say what happens. Keep in mind that our schools, many of our schools are city-wide schools. Keep in mind that many of our students cross districts all over this city. Okay, when I represented District 8, which was about 8 blocks away from Pulaski, I went into Pulaski all the time, wasn't my district. Danny Goldberg was the school board director there, and I told him, he says, go into that anytime you want, because I had a ton of kids from my district who went to Pulaski, because only about 6-8 blocks away. I get a phone call that there's a problem at Rufus King from somebody who lives in my area. All of us have people in our district who go all over the city. In addition to that, if we definitely have a citywide school in our district, we are all responsible for that. And because our schools are in a situation where we have kids all over the place, that is important. So I cannot support this.
Director Phillips.
Thank you, Vice President Miller. So when we discussed this item in committee, I brought up some similar points to that Director Falk brought up in terms of having somebody that had elected you as a school board member within your geographical area, but they might work or their student might attend a different school. And from my understanding from the author of the resolution, the intent wasn't to keep from problem solving, but more of the intent was around making sure that other board members were working in that collaborative fashion that Director Falk referenced in the Code of Ethics. So I don't know if this is just wordsmithing around this further resolves to reflect the collaboration between board members and better communication versus not being able to address issues. I don't think that anybody on this board wants to delay finding solutions for our constituents. So I guess my follow-up is to the resolution author, if there can be wordsmithing around this item to reflect what I believe was the intent of this statement.
Okay, the director that's speaking, he did come up with something that he would like to see, and I accepted at the committee. And now, what is he expecting now? He has to tell me what he's looking for it in, for me to make an acceptance of
All
what
right,
he
let's,
wants.
okay.
He did it at the committee meeting. He said what he wanted, and then I agreed to it. So I don't know what he wants now. He's
But there's-
back again at the same thing.
But so let me be clear, there's not a change in the wording
Well,
as to what's going on. So Director Falk, you had your hand up, and then Director Bias.
Thank you. Words matter. Okay?
Well, just
If-
give him the word.
Excuse me, Director Woodward, he's
I
speaking.
don't care, give him the word.
Okay, words matter. The fact is that there was no change that was made in this resolution, as far as I know. And, I mean, I have some problems with the direction that this is going in. I think we have to understand that we are responsible for all the children. I have no problem with informing the board member of that district that I'm going into that school. But the second resolve clearly is out of bounds in terms of our duties and responsibilities as board members. And words do matter.
Director Bias.
And Director Miller and Director Falk, I totally agree. Words do matter. I don't read as much in this resolution as you are indicating. I just hope that, for example, if in my district there is an issue that another board member from another district is aware of and wants to resolve, that at least there be the protocols, the courtesy, that I should be made aware of that. As somebody who is elected by the public, okay, to represent that district, I may not know about that. So it would be in the best interest of all of us if that cordiality, if that collaboration happens, and we're able to then find out. So you happen to know something in District X that is your district, but you find out something that's happening in the 6th district, in my district, you go out to resolve that issue without me knowing. That puts me in a difficult situation, okay? And I wouldn't appreciate that, okay? I think that how we elect people to this board may be an issue, and maybe we need to have that discussion at some point. But I didn't read that in this resolution. I mean, the last resolve says, but being respectful of each other's responsibility should not preclude one board member from being able to offer advice or assistance, if appropriate, to another board member in resolving the issue, okay? You know, why would you want to resolve something in somebody else's district totally alone? If I know I should be able to work with you and get your advice, and you are then able to tell me, you know, I think this can be resolved in this way and that way, and if I resist, then there is an issue, there is a problem, okay? And I should not do that as an elected board member. I should collaborate, as the code indicates, in such a way that I make it happen. So, being the chair of that committee, I did not read into this that much, okay? If there's a need for wordsmithing that corrects that, let's do it. But I think that I do not see that extent in doing this, okay?
I'm going to pass the gavel.
Director Miller.
Yeah, in response to that, I do see that this is going over the line. Where do we draw the line here, is my question. Where is the line drawn? Because, for example, one board member on Tuesday put forward a proposal to not fund a community school in a school that's not in their district. They have the right to do that. The board rejected that. But I asked that board member from that district, were they consulted with? And they said no, which is fine. I remember when Director Bonds and Director Harris put forward a proposal around an alternative school setting, which is coming back to the board, and they proposed to put it in Webster. It's not in either one of their districts. They didn't consult. I asked the board president whose district it was in, did they consult with you? And he said no. We do things. There was a protest around the water at North Division, okay? There was a protest around the water, and there were people out demonstrating, handing out water in front of the school, and didn't even know what was going on with the water in the school. So I didn't call the board member. I called board governor and said, I'd like to set up a meeting with Mr. Willis to find out what did we do in that school with that water, and I found out from a meeting with him that we were below the ppm, and we were trying to get the ppm, the parts per million, down to 0, okay? So that I, as a board member, could be informed. I didn't go to that board member to do that. Now, I went to view the school at Riverside when a charter was trying to come in there. I called the board member as a courtesy, okay, to say I was going to go look at one of her schools. That was a courtesy. But this right here is not restricting me in doing, this is saying that I cannot create policy. If you take it to its logical conclusion, it's saying I can't create policy or make opinions without going through that board member. I disagree with that. That means that we cannot do what the Code of Ethics says. Act in the interest and jurisdiction of MPS, that's all of MPS, and the students whom the board serves. I serve all the students, okay? So I'll be courteous, but that's not what this resolution is telling me. This is going beyond courtesy. This is saying that you can't do anything with my schools unless I check it off. so it's a problem. So,
Director Harris.
Yes, I would concur with my colleague, Vice President Miller, and my colleague, Director Falk. From my perspective, and I came into this work on this board from a career, I would say, of working in organizations where common courtesy, when you're an elected official in an organization, the common courtesy is to protocol, is the word I would use, that we share with each other our intent before we go into another person's district and ask, or whatever the case may be. But to preclude me from, as an elected official, from being able to suggest that we put a school in a Webster, which is not in my district, having to get permission from the presiding member, board member, who is responsible for that district overall, I think would hinder us as a board from getting our work done. And certainly we can all be courteous to each other. I think there's just basic protocol that elected officials and people who work together offer each other, or should. So I would not be able to support this resolution based on the reasons that have been stated and for my own reasons. Thank you.
oh, okay, Director Phillips, well, I'll go down the line. Director Phillips, Director Falk, Director Bias.
Thank you, Vice President Miller. I wanted to provide a amendment to the resolution, or a friendly amendment here. So in the second resolved, that we strike the statement, the member, rather than attempting to address the issue him or herself, so that the resolve would read, further resolved that when a member of the board is made aware of an issue that has arisen in another member's district, the member shall make the director of the district in question aware of the issue. And I think if we take out the line about attempting to address the issue, it's just very clear around what Director Harris just talked about, that common courtesy of making our board members aware, and it doesn't state how issues should be addressed. So that is what I would suggest to the board to consider.
Okay, Director Falk.
Yeah, we're moving closer to the direction. Keep in mind, let's go to the very top of this and look at that third statement, because I think it's very important in terms of what it says. And I think we're getting there to some degree on the Code of Ethics. It says board members will act cooperatively. Okay? We're to act cooperatively. Even that statement, that implies that I shouldn't be going off on my own, okay, in terms of, working on a particular issue in somebody else's district, if there's the ability to do so. Now, keep in mind, sometimes you get a phone call, and we got a problem right now, can you get over here? That I think Director Miller gave an example of that in terms of the issue of the water. But, it doesn't mean that Director Miller couldn't ultimately call the director in that district. And I think it means that we were also not working cooperatively quite often in terms of the fact of this. I'm hesitant to go quite as far as Director Phillips, however, because I don't want to be in a situation where every time something's going on, we're going to have to call somebody in their district, especially if it's a citywide issue.
Director Bias.
I think that we have responsibility for the whole district. I absolutely am clear about that. I think that there's a distinction between day-to-day kinds of things that happen in districts, and there are issues that had to do with the city as a whole. Director Miller was gracious enough to tell us about that incident of the border and what have you. I have done the same thing for example, during the Webster debate. He raised some issues and the possibility, and that's not in my district. I did let directors say no. I think that it's just the simple courtesy of being able to let other board members that work in a particular district know, and that's a phone call. That's no big deal, okay? I think that we need to learn how to work cooperatively. That doesn't mean that we should have resolutions that stop us from doing that, and that's why I like somewhat the language that you have proposed, because I think the intent of this is making sure that when issues arise, we're going to work at it to better the condition of all children in the district. That should be our motto. That should be what we do. Okay? But as we do it, I don't want to be surprised in a board meeting. I want to be able to know about it. You took the initiative. That's fantastic. Go ahead. But I would like to know, okay? Because there may be a constituent that voted for me that is going to say, did you know about this? And I'm going to say, no, I didn't. I agree with it, but I didn't know about it, okay? But why not know about it? I should know about it. It's simple. It's cordial. It's the kind of thing to do so that we work collaboratively. And the code talks about us working collaboratively, and I fully support the idea of greater collaboration. We should do those kinds of things.
Yeah, it's been handed back to me. So at this point, okay, Director Miller,
But that's different than what this says. This says that on certain policy, well, first of all, everybody doesn't work collaboratively on every issue. That's just a fact, okay? So you can say, oh yeah, let's be collaborative, but everybody doesn't play by the same rules on every issue. And so, does that mean that the person who's trying to be collaborative but the other person isn't, what should they do? What should they do? Because it doesn't always work that way. Here's the point. This is telling you that if you're going to do something that has something to do with another district, you are to go through that person. And it's that. If you want to be courteous or try to be collaborative with that person, that's all fine and dandy. But it doesn't always work like that. And so I oppose being told that anything that goes on in that district. People make recommendations around my district, made some recommendations on MLK. I didn't even react to it. I didn't even respond to it because it's for the betterment of children. And that's how we should look at it. This is all about for the betterment of children. So I can't support this, even with some wordsmithing.
okay, before we go any further, I want to clarify with the board clerk, because we initially did not have a motion, but that Director Phillips made a statement regarding what should be in this, I'm assuming that what she is doing is she has made a resolution with modifications. Is that correct? A motion with modifications, that you're not modifying a motion because no motion had been made. You follow what I'm saying?
Sure.
Yeah, okay.
Didn't make a motion.
Oh, you did make, well, okay, where we're at, so everyone understands then, we do not have a motion right now. So I don't know if someone, go ahead, Director Harris.
Yeah, I want to make a motion, and the motion being that we take this item off, the right language helped me with it, that we take this item off, set it aside, and bring it back after there's been some further.
Let me clarify. You want to send it back to committee?
Send it back to committee.
Okay.
So we can, and bring it back with something that we can bring it back to the full board with some changes.
Okay, so your motion is to send it back to committee. Because it's full board, we need a second.
I see.
Director Bias seconds it. Any further discussion regarding that?
Well, if I can make a comment.
Go ahead.
It will be appropriate, given the nature of the discussion we had, that an item like this, a resolution like this, come back to committee, and we have further discussion and wordsmithing in committee. I think that I want to respect Director Woolwood's intent in trying to make sure that we saw the kinds of things that she sees regarding some of these issues, but it seems to me appropriate that if we hold it and we send it back to committee, we can, in the proper forum, do whatever has to be done with it, and then we bring it back to this board. Thank you.
Is there any additional discussion on the motion? Seeing none, will the board clerk please call the roll?
On Director Harris's motion to send this item back to the Legislation, Rules, and Policies Committee, seconded by Director Baez. On the motion as read, Director Baez.
Aye.
Director Falk. Oh, I'm
Aye.
sorry. Director Harris.
Aye.
Director Phillips.
Aye.
Director Woodward. Director Miller.
Aye.
Chair Paul.
Aye.
That's 6 ayes. The motion passes.
And I'm handing the gavel back to Vice President Miller.
Madam Secretary, were there any other items set aside?
Mr. Chair, that was the last item set aside.
Are there any items of regular business?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we have 2 items of regular business. Item 1 is the reports of the board's delegate. The first report is a report of the board's delegate to the MPS Head Start Policy Council.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and community. The report is on file for your viewing. If you have any questions, please contact Director Harris.
Madam Secretary, what's the next report?
The next report is a report of the board's delegate to the Milwaukee Education Partnerships, MEP.
President Sain is the delegate to the Milwaukee, to the MEP, and this report is attached. Madam Secretary, next report.
The next report is the report of the board's delegate to the Title I District Advisory Council, DAC.
Director Phillips.
Thank you, Vice President Miller. This report is before you, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, next report, Madam Secretary. What's the next item of regular business?
The next item of regular business is the monthly report of the president of the Milwaukee Board of School Directors.
Item 2 is, okay.
President Sain indicated to our office that he will provide this report next month.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
As he is excused from this meeting, he will provide it next month. Madam Secretary, are there any items of new business for referral?
Yes, Mr. Chair. We have, the item is action on proposed revisions to Administrative Procedure 8.20, Uniforms and Student Dress Code.
This item will be referred to the Committee of Legislation, Rules, and Policies. Madam Secretary, are there any communications for referral?
No, Mr. Chair, we have no communications for referral.
Madam Secretary, are there any resolutions for referral?
We have no resolutions.
Madam Secretary, what's our next item of business?
The next item of business was the item that was deferred until the end of the meeting, communication from the Office of Board Governance. This item before you is action on a request to retire to executive session in order to confer with legal counsel regarding litigation in which the board is or is likely to become involved. The item has been noticed for possible executive session pursuant to Wisconsin statute, section 19.85, parent 1, parent G, which allows a governing body to retire to executive session for the purpose of conferring with legal counsel who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the body with respect to litigation in which the board is or is likely to become involved. The recommendation is that the board determine how it wishes to proceed with this item.
At this time, I will accept a motion to retire to executive session pursuant to Wisconsin statute section 19.85, 1G, which allows a governing body to retire to executive session for the purpose of conferring with legal counsel who is running oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the body with respect to litigation in which it is or is likely to become involved. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
And a second.
Aye, second.
Okay, is there any discussion? Not seeing any, Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
On Director Harris's motion to retire to executive session, seconded by Director Baez. Director Baez.
Aye.
Director Falk.
Aye.
Director Harris.
Aye.
Director Phillips.
Aye.
Director Woodward.
Aye.
Chair Miller.
Aye.
That's 6 ayes, the motion passes.
At this time, the board will retire to executive session pursuant to Wisconsin Statute Section 19.851G, which allows a governing body to retire to executive session for the purpose of conferring with legal counsel who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the body with respect to litigation in which it is or is likely to become involved. The board may reconvene in open session to take action on matters discussed in closed session. Otherwise, the board will adjourn from executive session. Please note the time when the board retires to executive session.
So noted.
Thank you.
Jeans Mustang, take off your makeup. The party's over. It's all over. Yes, all over. It's all over, my
Thank you. And now, Stefanos proudly presents one of the most unusual jazz attractions, Frankie DeMiles and his wonderful trio featuring Wendy Halverson on bass, Marley Walk on drums. Here they are with Houseboat.
Gone with the wind, just like a leaf that has blown away. Gone with the wind, my lover has flown away. Yesterday's kisses are still on my lips. I've had a lifetime of heaven at my fingertips, but now all is gone. Gone is the rapture that thrilled my heart. Gone with the wind, the gladness that filled my heart, just like a flame. Love burned brightly, then became an empty smoke dream that is gone, gone with the wind. But now all is gone. Gone is the rapture that thrilled my heart. Gone with the wind, the gladness that filled my heart, just like a flame. Love burned brightly, then became an empty smoke dream that is gone, gone with the wind. Gone with the Come fly with me, let's fly away. If you can use some exotic booze, there's a bar in far Bombay. Fly with me, let's fly away. Come fly with me, let's fly down to Peru. In Llama Land, there's a one-man band, and he'll toot his flute for you. Fly with me, let's take off the blues. Once I get you up there, where the air is rarefied, we'll just glide, starry-eyed. Once I get you up there, I'll be holding you so near. You may hear angels cheer, 'cause we're together. Weather-wise, it's such a lovely day. Just say the words and we'll beat the birds down to Acapulco Bay. It's perfect for a flying honeymoon, they say. Come fly with me, let's fly away. Get you up there where the air is rarefied, we'll just glide, starry-eyed. Once I get you up there, I'll be holding you so near. You may hear weather, weather-wise, such a lovely day. Just say the words and we'll meet the birds down to Acapulco Bay. It's perfect for a flying honeymoon, they say. Come fly with me, yes, fly with me. Let's fly away. When sunny gets blue, eyes get gray and cloudy, then the rain begins to fall. Pitter-patter, pitter-patter, love is gone, so what could matter? No sweet loving man comes to call. When sunny gets blue, she breathes a sigh of sadness like the wind that stirs the trees. Wind that sets the leaves to swaying like some violins are playing weird and haunting melodies. People always used to love to hear her laugh, see her smile. That's how she got her name. Since that sad affair, she's lost her smile, changed her style. Somehow she's not the same. But memories will fade and pretty dreams will rise up where other dreams fell through. Hurry, new love, hurry here to kiss away each lonely tear. Hold her near when sunny gets blue. People always used to love to hear her laugh, see her smile. That's how she got her name. Since that sad affair, she's lost her smile, changed her style. Somehow she's not the same, but memories will fade, pretty dreams will rise up where other dreams fell through. Hurry, new love, hurry here to kiss away its lonely tear and hold her near when sunny gets blue. town, be good to me, please. Why wish me harm? Why not retire to a farm and be contented to charm the birds off the trees? Just disappear, I care for you much too much. And when you are near, close to me, dear, we touch too much. The thrill when we meet is bitter and sweet. That, darling, is getting me down. So on your mark, get set, get out of town. Get out of town, be good to me, please. Why wish me harm? Why not retire to a farm and be contented to charm the birds off the trees? Just disappear, I care for you much too much. And when you are near, close to me, dear, we touch too much. The thrill when we meet is bitter and sweet. That, darling, it's cutting me down. So on your mark, get set. On your mark, get set. Yes, on your mark, get set, and get out of town. What's new? How is the world treating you? You haven't changed a bit. Lovely as ever, I must admit. What's new? How did that romance come through? We haven't met since then. Gee, but it's nice to see you again. What's new? Probably I'm boring you, but seeing